Hi there. My name is Eric Matson, and I'm with the Rochester chapter of the HLAA, or the Hearing Loss Association of America. This program is intended to communicate some tips for caregivers. We've looked at a lot of so-called certified programs for caregivers, and virtually none spend any real amount of time talking about hearing loss on the folks being cared for, which is most of the people you'll be dealing with. And they ignore the challenge. So we thought we'd fill the gap with this humble program. As mentioned, um, a lot of the folks you deal with are going to have hearing loss. It's a myth that old age is the primary cause of hearing loss. Um, Anybody can have it. In fact, the 12 to 15% of the high school crowd have immeasurable hearing loss. In the workforce, some 25%. But when you get over 65, it goes from 50 to 70% of seniors. So you're talking a lot of folks. Chances are you're working with some of them. There's 48 million Americans that have hearing loss, so uh, they aren't alone. Unfortunately, uh, about two-thirds of the folks who should get help of some kind uh, don't. Uh, and it could be because of cost, the old now debunked uh, idea that hearing aids make you look old. Uh, Maybe they've heard that they're uncomfortable from somebody and they haven't tried them themselves. Uh, there's no reason for that. All hearing aids can be made comfortable. But the bottom line is that even among the folks that realize their hearing isn't up to snuff anymore, uh, wait about 7 years before they do anything, and that's really the time that it takes till their compensating factors and the enablement of others starts to not work as well for them. They don't realize the burden that they're imposing on the people around them. People having to consciously follow the communications rules uh, do find that it gets old after a while. There are three primary rules for listening and three things that the so-called enablers are known to do. One is to speak clearly, to enunciate. Some people have higher frequency loss, some people have lower frequency loss, but in other cases, they're missing critical parts of the words that they're hearing. They're missing the soft sounds or the hard sounds, and both can be an issue. The second rule is to face the person you're trying to communicate with, consciously or unconsciously. People who are hard of hearing uh, read lips and expressions, and if you're not looking at them, that's a little difficult. The third basic rule is to slow down, not a lot, just a little bit. Uh, I know myself uh, as I uh, mature, uh, the brain gets very complex and full, and it needs to slow down a little bit. I have trouble with the some of the radio announcers and TV announcers who apparently have stopped being trained to slow down their speech. They're in such a hurry to communicate that they miss the mark for somebody who's hard of hearing. I set up a voice to text tablet next to the TV, and that seems to work pretty well at catching what they're saying and putting it in a readable form for me. Uh, there are three sub-subjects or sub-roles that you really want to think about. The first one is keep the subject matter and the conversations to one. I know in restaurants, if there's half a dozen people around the table, you'll sometimes end up with three conversations. That's almost impossible to follow for a person with hearing loss. So try and stick to one conversation when you're in a group. The second sub rule is yelling doesn't help. In fact, yelling can result in perceived distortion on the part of a person with hearing loss. So speak in a normal tone of voice, clearly and deliberately, but speak in a normal volume. Finally, because people read your mask or your lips and expressions, it's a good idea to not wear a mask unless it's absolutely necessary. And even in situations where you do need to wear a mask, they are available with transparent inserts around the lips, so people have some chance of using their lip reading skills. There's several different types of hearing aids, um, and as a caregiver, it's a good idea to know if the person you're working with has one and what its capabilities are. Some practical things like how to take it in and out, uh, how to change the wax filter, if it's battery powered, how to change the battery. And I would highly recommend that you talk to the audiologist at wherever the person you're working with went to get the device. It's good for a lot of reasons to know who that person is and for them to know you. One type of hearing aid is called the completely in the canal type, the so-called invisible type that fits in. And then there's an in the canal uh, type that is more visible, but it fits further out inside the ear, still one piece. Finally, there's an in the ear uh, type of device that's fairly visible, fits in the outer ear, has some advantages over the others, however. The behind the ear wired speaker has all of the uh, primary circuitry and what have you in the main body that fits behind the ear, but then transmits what it hears as an electrical signal to the speaker or so-called receiver at the end of a wire, and it's that receiver that goes in the ear. Finally, there's a behind the ear tube speaker where everything is in the main body, including the speaker. And because it's there, there's more room for a bigger speaker and it can be more powerful. The sound it produces travels down a tube to the person's ear. Uh, in broad sense, you need to know how to take it in and out. You need to be able to help the person take it in and out. The completely in the ear and the in the canal type of hearing aids, um, because they lack some features because they've been made so small. And there's no room for those features. For instance, it's difficult to have manual volume controls on a device that's hidden inside your ear. It's also difficult to have a large battery or power source in the smaller hearing aids. Completely in the canal, you can't see it. All you can see is the usually nylon puller that remains visible and allows you to remove or extract the hearing aid from the person. All of the in-ear types are available with batteries or they're rechargeable. Uh, the behind the ear types can have more features because they've got a bigger body, although those are getting smaller too. Uh, I wear the behind the ear with wired speakers, and people can't see them because they're so small. However, having said that, there is room for large batteries, manual control switches. Uh, Mine even have motion sensors in them so they can tell where I'm looking. Uh, I have a T-coil or a telecoil in there that receives uh, audio signals from the hearing loops, the so-called hearing loops that are in a lot of public places like churches and museums and libraries. The same is true of behind the ear speakers uh, with tubes, um, and that there is room for all full-featured type of device. But like I say, it's good to have a chat with the provider of whatever device you encounter, so that you know how to help the person put it in, take it out, uh, overcome any digital dexterity problems, uh, so that you know whether it's batteries or not, and how to change those. Uh, if it has one microphone or several, and how to keep those areas ready, how to dry the device if it gets moisture in it. Um, and virtually all of these have a wax filter of some sort in the path between the device and where the wire or the tube enters the ear. Um, these wax straps can stop the function of a hearing aid if they get plugged up. So it's a good idea to chat with the audiologist, find out where the wax strap is located, uh, be informed of how to change the wax strap because it's not an uncommon requirement. You may get questions from the folks you work with about over-the-counter features and possibilities because they're so inexpensive. Uh, they're seen by the uh, audiological community as a helpful element to get people introduced to the idea of assisted hearing. because there's a lot of risks associated with not paying attention and doing something about it. You do need to be a little bit cautious. The FDA has approved over-the-counter hearing aids for the reason of its affordability and ability to interest people. But they're only for people with mild to moderate hearing loss by design. If you're beyond that into the serious or profound area, then you need full-blown hearing aids. There's a few essential questions that you should make sure of before you consider any offering. One is it FDA compliant? Does it meet the requirements of the Food and Drug Administration? The second is, is it comfortable? Does it physically fit? Most of them come with a variety of silicone domes, but there's additional domes available, and only an audiologist can guide you on that, really. These include very small domes designed for young people, but you may require one if you have a small ear canal. The third essential, as far as we're concerned, is a manual volume control. Some of these devices will have so-called automatic volume control and not require adjustment. Those are the ones that fit in the ear canal, and they can't have an exposed volume control. But for instance, if you go into a restaurant that has a normal amount of noise, the hearing aids will say, "Oh, it's noisy in here," and they'll want to turn the volume up. When in fact, experienced users know that it's sometimes better to turn the hearing aids down a little bit because it tends to block out background noise more than close in conversation. It'll help you more. The fourth thing is kind of an essential consideration is how dependent is the device on a smartphone. Some devices can only be controlled via an application on a smartphone. But if the person you're trying to help doesn't have a smartphone, doesn't want a smartphone, is intimidated by smartphones, that you need to keep looking until you find a device that has controls that don't require a smartphone. There's a lot of other optional but recommended considerations too before you part with your money. For instance, if you can only get these online, so if it arrives and you find out that it's not comfortable or it's not the type of device that's going to be good for you, doesn't seem to work, then you want to return it. So the question is, how do I do that? Do I get a cash refund or a store credit? Store credit isn't much good if you want to try a different brand. How do I get support if something goes wrong? There's a lot of simple questions, and if you hang on to this copy, you'll have it to draw from. A new development that has come on the market is called a bone-aided hearing aid. This is similar to the cochlear implant that we saw earlier. The cochlear implant doesn't have any sound delivery system to the outer ear. Rather, the processor's in a behind-the-ear device, and it sends its signals to a magnetic inductor that fastens to a surgically implanted disc behind the ear, the receptor, and that in turn has wires that run through the head into the uh, hearing organ itself and the hearing nerve. And that's how people hear. It's only for folks that are very hard of hearing, profoundly lost, and it can be in just one ear or in both ears. It varies, but the new variation on that is called the bone anchored hearing aid, the Baha. This has a processor that's all in one magnetically based unit that sends signals corresponding to what it hears to a receiver. And it's again surgically implanted in the scalp. But this is basically a transducer or a vibrator that sends a mechanical version of what it hears through the bones of the head to both the hearing nerve and the hearing center of your brain. And this is less invasive than a cochlear implant, and it seems to work quite well for some folks. But again, an audiologist is best placed. What you need to know is how do you keep it dry? How do you change the batteries if it's battery based? How do I change the wax filter and the like? And the audiologist would be happy to instruct you on that. One of the main aids for people with hearing loss, particularly those that are in bed and have taken their hearing out, is voice to text, which is a new free software system, and it's been applied primarily to telephones. There's a number of companies that make these CapTel, caption call, and a caption, and like uh, basically anything the caller has to say appears as readable text on the screen of the device. And that's a big help. Anything that you say back to the caller appears as corresponding text. It's like getting a text on a smartphone. While talking about that, these telephone services are available for both landlines, as seen at the top here, or as cell phone versions. The application is free from the provider. The reason everything is free is that the providers are paid by a government program, and they're watching the usage on the telephone number associated with the device and basing their payment on the number of calls and the duration of the calls. They do not listen to the contents of the calls. But I have one on my phone and I rely heavily on it on my cell phone. They're wonderful. Now, you're probably wondering, do I have to give a separate phone number to all of my potential callers? No. I talked to my provider, Spectrum, and they were able to give me call forwarding, which is available in almost all of the systems. And anybody who calls my regular number is automatically transferred to the number according or corresponding to my device. So it's invisible to callers and it works extremely well. I'm surprised at how good the software is and how few mistakes it makes. Most of those are in the area of technical or medical arenas because the dictionaries that the devices are used haven't been programmed for some of those special areas, but you can still pretty well make out what's going on. At very worst, you ask your caller to spell what they're saying. Having said that, uh, you can get free software that goes on your smartphone or on a tablet that's set up to receive phone calls. Uh, but these programs allow casual conversation, even like in a restaurant, to appear as readable text on your phone. It doesn't have to be a caller. I have that on mine. It's called Live Transcribe. Um, Live Transcribe is a wonderful program. It's written for Android operating systems. But if you have an Apple device, there's a similar program called Otter, Otter. Both convert voice to text, and they're wonderful. You can also get a volume booster software that you can load onto your phone or device. Uh, and these work very well. You simply energize them when you're in a conversation with somebody, and it'll boost the volume to whatever level you think is appropriate. You do have to take care because you can boost them too high, and in some cases 800%, and you can damage your residual hearing. Finally, if you're not a hearing aid user, uh, you can download a program called Petrolux, which has some built-in tests for you to take, and it will then simulate uh, uh, what you would hear from a hearing aid. This is very useful for convincing people uh, to take the leap and get a good assistive device. The other thing to consider, particularly as people have a tendency to take out their hearing aids when they're in bed or in some other situations, they may have trouble hearing alarm clocks, smoke alarms, and so forth. Uh, so what the industry has come up with is a series of devices that listen for such sounds and set off, in addition to an audio alarm, they'll set off a flashing strobe light. That gets the person attention. The ones you see in the upper left there detects all kinds of hazardous situations such as uh, a fire, smoke, carbon monoxide, knocks at the door, babies crying, kitchen alarms, and the like. In fact, you can even get an accessory for it, which you see there in the disc. And there's a similar one on the alarm clock below it. These are bed shakers. I put mine under a pillow on the alarm clock, and when the alarm clock goes off, it shakes the bed just like somebody stuck a quarter in the old motel machines. You do not sleep through it, and it works great. These are all devices that we have on display at our uh, demonstration center. Another question that we often run into is how about assistive devices for listening to TV, which is particularly important if there's more than one person because they may require different levels. if it's turned up loud enough for the person who's hard of hearing, it'll be overwhelming to a normal hearing person. I had that situation with my wife. I need maximum volume, and she needed very little help. So I invested a lot of money in a fancy Bluetooth accessory for my hearing aids. It connected to the TV in a way that didn't stop the normal volume, and it allowed me to adjust my hearing aids to a level for myself, and she could introduce or adjust the volume with a regular volume on the TV to suit herself. That was fine until she tried to say something to me. Then I had to dig through menus to mute my Bluetooth device. That didn't go over very well. So I wanted something with easier to mute devices. I started out with a TV listener with Bluetooth headphones, so that I didn't have wires running across the room. And they work quite well, but again, you have to wear earphones. Finally, one of my colleagues introduced me to something called a Sarionic, which is a personal soundbar. Now, I have serious to profound loss in my hearing, but I found this device works very, very well. You can see there's a base unit that plugs into the TV, regardless almost of what options are available for plugging in a device. And that sends a signal to the soundbar you see with the handle on it that sits on the table next to my easy chair. And it's got a giddy up and move switch, simple rotary switch for more volume or turn it on and off. And I find it, because it's close to my ear, it works marvelously. Yet if somebody else in the room wants to get my attention, no problem. I can flick it off and listen. These devices are all available from a variety of sources, including Amazon, eBay, and Igloo, but more on that later. Uh, how about the care of the user? We've talked about the care of the device and changing batteries or changing wax filters or drying them out, but the user may have some needs as well. Uh, Sometimes they'll complain of itching. You can get anti-itch solution. Otherwise, silicone buds or tips may be changing, need changing. If they got new hearing aids, they may have a dome on a silicone dome on the end of the hearing aid that's too big for their ear canal. And there's a variety of sizes. Uh, if all else fails, the audiologist can normally equip most hearing aids with a custom molded tip that for sure is going to fit into the ear perfectly. Uh, like I say, I have pretty serious loss, but I use the silicone buds and they work fine. Having said that, I've got a different size one in my right ear than I do in my left because the canals are different size. Another problem that is frequent is wax buildup. We talked about changing wax filters on a hearing aid, but the question is how can you get wax out of people's ears in the first place? And they do make wax removal kits that can be found almost any grocery store, drugstore. And They are quite effective at loosening and removing wax buildup. It's important because if wax builds up so enough, it can block the function of the eardrum. That's the first thing that you encounter in dealing with the hearing system. So the person you're caring for, if they have a wax complaint, you can get wax loosening and cleaning kits to take those out. Finally, and this is one that I faced with my grandmother and my mother, both of whom lived to be over 100. They have behind the ear hearing aids, but they tend to come out and get lost. That's a concern. So I got some, in case my mother, I got some lanyards that pinned to the clothes and attached to the hearing aids. So yeah, they can still come out, but they don't get lost. And that's handy. Again, these are all uh, devices we show at our demonstration center. Uh, we did talk about the device and taking care of it, but we didn't illustrate a lot of it. Uh, Here you see a variety of those. They make uh, small containers that fit on your keychain. You can put spare batteries and the like in them and have them with you at all times. When I had battery operated hearing aids, I carried a packet of batteries with me for a quick change. This is one style of wax filter change device, typical of Oticon and some, or Phonak and some others. Oticons are different. Uh, but you can see the tiny little white tip there is in fact a wax filter. And that's what's going to be put in after you take the old one out. Again, get an audiologist to demonstrate that for you. It requires a certain amount of dexterity, but it's not terribly complex. The inner ear is a very moist environment for hearing aids, and wearers sometimes almost inevitably will get in the shower or whatever wearing them if forgetting. Uh, so you can dry them out, and we recommend that you do dry them out on a regular basis. You can, in fact, get in an electric dryer. Uh, if you got rechargeables, the maker of the rechargeables will sometimes offer as an accessory a recharger that has a dryer built in. These devices work very, very well. If you're traveling and you're worried about having access to electricity, uh, particularly if you're camping, for instance, you can use a simple container. This one is commercially available, but I use an old pill bottle and put some silica gel packets in it, and that works very, very well for removing moisture in the field. So you don't have to spend a fortune if you don't want to. These are very compact. In fact, you can buy silica gel or desiccant packages on Amazon in bulk and have them available. Finally, a word on external microphones. If the person you're caring for has trouble hearing in a large group or around a table or in a noisy restaurant, one of the possible solutions is to use an external microphone. Now, that doesn't mean there's something wrong with the microphones in your hearing aids. But you have to remember they're designed to do their best at a range of 6 to 8 feet. If you get beyond that, all bets are off by design. So that's where an external microphone comes in. Now, in fact, most hearing aid makers offer as an accessory an external microphone for that reason. So it's a good idea to check that out and see what's available. You can go on our webpage and there's links to all the makers so that you can see what their accessory offerings are. You can also make your own Bluetooth-based external microphone, which I've done. Uh, but it's a good idea to have a resident engineer around to help you with that. Not again, not expensive. Uh, very, very useful. I've found even in motels, if I want to watch TV and don't have my normal apparatus, I'll take the extra external microphone, set it near the TV, and it talks via Bluetooth to my hearing aids, so I can hear the motel TV with no problem. So consider an external microphone if the person you're caring for has any problems with distance, background noise, and the like. You've heard me mention the T-coil or telecoil. Uh, I have it in my hearing aids as an accessory item. It's very small, as you see in the picture. Uh, But what happens is a lot of places that have PA systems will install an audio loop, uh, which is just a simple amplifier that feeds the audio signal to a wire that runs around the room. In its essence, it's a low power AM radio station. And if you've got a tickle on your hearing lobe, that's like an antenna, so you can hear what's on the radio station. It's it's really fantastic. We have them in my church, and it interrupts my nap time, but it does work remarkably well. It's like having the speaker right next to me. Now, I notice a lot about people in my church who should be hearing aids, all the white heads, uh, don't. But they're because of that, they're losing any benefit from the hearing loop that the church has. So I offered and put in the greeting area a couple of standalone receivers for the loop. These people can use simple earphones or earpieces, even earbuds, plug them in, and they can hear everything that's on the loop with a very simple on-off volume control, and it works quite well. So uh, even if the person you care for doesn't have telecoils, you can encourage them to get an audio loop receiver, particularly if they want to go to a church or synagogue or a museum or a theater that has loop service. One of the last topics here is important to you as a caregiver uh, in situations, is you'll be responsible for helping make sure folks take their medications when they're supposed to. Uh, but you be alert. Uh, always follow the recommendations of a doctor, but make sure the doctor is aware of what they call ototoxic characteristics of these medications. Ototoxic means bad for your ears. It won't cause hearing loss, but it will has the potential to aggravate it and make it seem worse, at least in the short term. So be careful. Anybody that's on a chronic user of some of these medications, anything with acetaminophen, for instance, I'll bet some of the, maybe yourself, the non-steroidal aids like Motrin and Advil and Aleve, very common, but potentially phototoxic. Certainly, certain antibiotics like streptomycin or erythromycin, Lasix and the like. Be careful of. Immunocytes, this is what I have to worry about. Methotrexate. I've got an autoimmune complaint, and they treat it with Mexicane. I used to take Remicade, that didn't work. That's when they put me on methotrexate. Uh, you don't have to worry too much about quinine since they've stopped making it available as such. But if your person is given in to drinking gin and tonics, the tonic water has quinine in it, and you got to be careful of the consumption rate. Now, Vicodin, and a lot of the diuretics, lidocaine, uh, some of the Librium, Valium, the attitude adjusters. Be careful of them. And the list goes on and on. If you want to see it full list, there's a web page address here for the list. But these are the common ones you should be careful. Finally, I'd like to talk about balance issues, which is a critical concern for caregivers. You don't want your uh, person of interest to fall and break something, particularly in advanced years. Uh, breaks are a serious number. And the odds of having balance issues in concert with the hearing aid are pretty sobering. For instance, even if you have mild hearing loss, there's a 50 to 75% chance of having balance problems. Moderate loss, 75 to 85% chance. Severe is 85 to 95, and if you're like me with profound, it's almost a sure bet you're going to have balance issues. And in fact, I've had to resort to using a stick all the while. So just be aware that the two go together. They haven't proven that one causes the other. But what I've found is in my research is that the vestibular system or balance system, while separate from the hearing system, it shares the same liquid-filled inner ear space. So it stands to reason anything that affects one system is going to have the potential, at least, to affect the other. And that could account for these high percentages. Just be aware of it and encourage particularly the older folks or the folks with severe or profound hearing, even moderate hearing. Be sure that they are alert to the potential balance issues. Uh, to know which of these is in play, the audiologist can know or can find out for you. By the way, Medicare pays for professional testing once a year, so don't worry about the cost. Somebody that's on Medicare at least. Uh, most audiologists can also run tests for balance issues. Uh, your your person being cared for may tell you they can get by, but hopefully they don't fall for it. Hearing loss and dementia, you may have heard a lot about that. Well, what happens is that when you start to have any kind of noticeable hearing loss, you tend to avoid places that have a lot of background noise, selective avoidance. Well, if you're not careful, that can turn into general avoidance. You don't like to go any place where there's crowds. Well, that can lead to isolation and withdrawal. That can lead to loneliness and depression. And that, of course, can lead to cognitive slippage, better known as dementia of varying degrees. Uh, it's not a minor affair. 25% of adults 55 to 64 have a disabling hearing loss. Over 75, more than half, have a disabling hearing loss. And if they're not careful, uh, they they can get into a risk for dementia. Your risk for dementia doubles even if you have mild hearing. It triples if you have moderate hearing. And it's 5 times more likely if you have serious or profound loss like I had. So there's things you can do to keep your brain engaged and not worry about such things. But one of them is to get hearing aids and accessories that allow you to remain social and get out to these places. When you find out what kind of hearing aids your cared for person has, you'll also discover what brand they are. These these are the most common brands that you see listed here. Uh, these are the folks that have their own research and development group, and they own a lion's share of the market. But if your user, for instance, has phonic hearing aids and you have any questions, call this support number. They can sort you out. Same thing as Starkey. They're the only U.S. maker. But if you have a question about a Starkey hearing aid, that's the support number. If your person is an audiophile, listens to a lot of uh, oh, high fidelity records and so forth, they may want to take a look at uh, Widex hearing aids, which are very responsive to music. And there's this the support number for Widex. My experience is that these support centers for hearing aids are all manned by real people. So it's okay to ask questions. Speaking of questions, if you have any, you can go on to the web page, the national web page at hearingloss.org or Rochester Group's web page at hearinglossrochester.org. We're the largest chapter of hearing loss of America. Or you can send me an email on, there's my email address. I'd be happy to try and answer your questions or talk to an audiologist that I'm connected with to get the answer to your question. So don't be afraid to ask him. This picture of my wife of 10 years, forgets the rules. she's great for sticking her head in the refrigerator trying to talk to me. So in desperation, I finally came up with a reminder. I took this picture and I pasted a copy of it right on the back wall, inside back wall of the refrigerator. So when she opens it up, she sees Magoo here, and that's a reminder. I hope you've enjoyed this segment, and we'll share it with your friends.